Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kevin Wheeler, and I am the Client Success Lead here at StoreForce. I spend most of my time working directly with retail operations leaders, district managers, and finance teams to help them understand how traffic, scheduling, and store execution shape daily performance results in their stores. If you're a StoreForce client, you may have met me at one of our StoreForce community conferences, or potentially even at one of your own store managers conferences that I've been lucky enough to attend. But for anyone meeting me for the first time, my focus is simple. I love to help retailers translate data into actions that improve performance on the floor. Black Friday is one of the clearest moments of the year to analyze performance data, so I'm looking forward to walking through these powerful insights with you. A bit of a level set in terms of how we've structured the conversation today. First off, we're going to take a look at some of the consumer sentiment data and the broader market conditions that framed this year's Black Friday. We're then going to take a look at a recap of Black Friday, taking a look at key performance indicators we aggregated across our specialty retail clients. And we're going to look at the operational lessons that emerged and how they influence planning for 2026. Last but not least, before we wrap up, we're going to look at a preview of our NRF Big Ideas session, which expands on many of the key themes we're going to touch on today. Throughout the session, I'll share observations from our data set, highlight patterns that stood out, and ask a few questions of the audience along the way. These are meant to help you compare your own results against broader industry behavior. As we begin, consider a few starting points. Did you feel you had the tools to review Black Friday performance in real time and adjust? Do you know which KPIs moved the needle or were an opportunity on Black Friday weekend? And how does that compare to the industry trends we will discuss and that I will share? And going into 2026, are you confident you know where your biggest opportunities are in stores? With those questions in your mind, let's begin. Before we get into the Black Friday results, it's important to understand the mindset customers carried into the weekend. Consumer behavior this year was shaped heavily by broader economic conditions, and the Harris & Partners 2025 Christmas Spending Report gives us that helpful context. 62% of people polled felt that they were not financially prepared for the holidays. 71% planned to reduce their Christmas spending this year, and 84% perceived that Christmas will be more expensive to them this year than last year. Taking all of these things together, these numbers point to a customer who was cautious and highly value-driven. They are planning to be selective, intentional, and more thoughtful in their purchases this year. So how did this play out in stores? How did this consumer sentiment play out in the traffic that we saw? Well, it showed up in a slight decrease in traffic versus 2025. Down about 2% to last year. But we can see in some of the performance data that shoppers who entered stores were more purposeful, they were ready to buy, not browse, and associate interactions, because of that reduced traffic, carried even more weight and potential value. Every single visit mattered a little bit more because traffic was down slightly. The standout feature of this Black Friday was the quality of traffic rather than the volume. And the data I'm going to share with you strongly supports that. To anchor this in your own experience, I'd like to ask one question of the group. Feel free to message in the chat. Did you feel a noticeable shift in shopper intent this year compared to last year? And you can just hold that question in your mind. You could drop a yes, no into the chat if you feel comfortable. It's always useful to see how closely your experience aligns with the broader data. This shift in consumer mindsets creates the foundation for interpreting the KPIs we'll walk through next. So we have a clear picture in our minds of the consumer mindset going into the holiday season. We can look at how that translated into actual Black Friday performance. Instead of walking through the numbers one by one, I want to explain what they mean when viewed together. The data set tells a very clear story this year. Before we dig into the data, a bit of backstory on how StoreForce gets the data from our clients. If you're an existing client, this is probably familiar to you, but good opportunity to review what StoreForce does and how we get data from our clients. So we take POS data fed every 30 minutes from our clients to track sales, transactions, and units in near real time. If a retailer uses traffic counters, those also come in at the same time so we can report on conversion and shopper flow. We also receive nightly updates of employee records from HR systems and combine that with schedules and time clock punches to show how labor was deployed versus planned. Store hours ensure all comparisons and KPIs are aligned with the correct operating times, and additional inputs like weather and market performance can help contextualize results. All of this data feeds into StoreForce continuously, allowing us to produce a Black Friday report that reflects accurate, up-to-date performance across sales, labor, traffic, and productivity data, giving retailers a complete and holistic view of how the Black Friday weekend unfolded in near real time. All right, so let's dig into the data. Let's start with the sales trend. We heard earlier that traffic was down roughly 2% for specialty retail. That might be the first warning sign that a soft Black Friday weekend was likely, but that was not the case. When we look at the full Friday to Sunday period, the overall sales trend showed a much more positive story, with like-for-like sales up 10% across the 3 days. Here's how the weekend developed day by day. Friday was by far the standout day. StoreForce retailers delivered a 17% like-for-like sales lift, while traffic held relatively flat at just 1% to last year. Stores managed to drive significantly higher sales with roughly the same traffic as last year. This was due in part to a strategic investment many specialty retailers made on Friday, an 8% increase in labor spend on the day. This meant stores were better equipped to deal with that Black Friday traffic, creating a significant return on investment for retailers who staff them precisely. On Saturday, the trend softened slightly. Friday was the big winner this year, and traffic on Saturday was down 5%. But retailers still managed to convert that traffic into an 8% sales gain over last year. Another modest 6% lift in labor spent on Saturday helped make Saturday green for retailers that invested, despite the moderate decline in traffic. Sunday was nearly flat at just a 0.4% lift in sales, but can still be considered a success for many retailers, given that traffic was down 6%. Many retailers likely started to experience lighter inventory on Sunday, and customers were more selective of how they spent their money, with the average transaction on Sunday being down $12 versus their Friday results. Gone were the bulk purchases made on Friday. These Sunday shoppers were likely crossing off those last few items on their holiday lists one at a time. Now let's move into some KPIs that shaped the weekend as a whole. When read together, they give us a very consistent picture of shopper intent and store execution. As mentioned, foot traffic was down 2%, but sales still increased 10% year over year. That means growth came from higher productivity per associate and a more intentional shopper looking to make the most of Black Friday deals in a difficult economy. Conversion rate improved by 0.5 percentage point, proving that associates and leaders did more with the traffic they had. And the biggest winner this year was in average transaction value, which increased 12%, while UPT was down slightly, or units per transaction. Customers bought fewer items, but invested in more expensive and meaningful ones. Inflation and economic policy also played a part here. Many retailers have increased the cost of goods and services slightly to offset other costs. This did not seem to deter customers that were physically in your stores and in your malls, but may have influenced the reduced traffic we saw across the weekend. When you combine these KPIs, the story becomes clear. Customers bought fewer units, but invested more deeply in each one. Retailers who were prepared to support those choices captured more value and a higher conversion in ATV, turning a slight downtick in traffic into one of the biggest sales gains of the year. We also get some insights when we look at product categories. The strongest performance in the StoreForce group of clients came in the footwear and apparel spaces, and gift and novelty was also up 7%. These categories rely heavily on associate engagement, even on a weekend like Black Friday. So the investment in extra labor helped drive that sales growth in a meaningful way. Many of the biggest winners in this data set were apparel and footwear retailers that also do not typically put their goods on sale, highlighting that consumers were highly motivated to make a purchase when they felt they were getting a genuine deal from a brand. This reinforces that engagement and brand sentiment, not price, were the primary performance driver and decision maker. Buyers are not necessarily price obsessed, they are brand and value obsessed. They want to buy from brands where they perceive there is value in what they are buying, despite the economic conditions. So I asked the audience a second question. Did your teams have real-time visibility into these KPIs during Black Friday, or did most of your insights arrive after the weekend? A quick answer in the chat or in your head helps us understand how much room there is to influence performance through live decision making. Now that we've walked through the consumer mindset and the key metrics from the weekend, the next step is to understand what these results meant operationally. Black Friday acts as a stress test for the holiday season every year. It exposes strengths that can be scaled and gaps that need attention before the next holiday cycle. There are 3 operational themes that consistently emerge from our analysis and from the conversations we had with retail leaders after the Black Friday weekend. Lesson 1, labor is a revenue lever. One of the clearest lessons for 2026 is that labor, when placed with precision, is a revenue lever and not a cost line to minimize. Retailers invested 7% more labor this Black Friday weekend compared to last year. That investment paid for itself 7 times over because it delivered a 3% lift in labor productivity versus 2024. This shows up in several ways. Stores were better able to protect their highest value hours. Clients saw notable improvements in conversion and ATV when labor was invested properly at key moments in the weekend. And because traffic was down, misalignment was more costly than ever because each shopper carried more value. So retailers who strengthened peak coverage tended to outperform those who didn't. For 2026, the question is not how many more hours do stores need, but where can the hours that you get have the greatest impact? The second lesson is tied to selling effectiveness and operational excellence. Across our data set, we saw increases in average price per item and average transaction value without deeper discounting happening. That means value was created through execution, not promotions. Top performing stores likely shared several behaviors. Associates moved quickly from greeting to discovery to recommendation based off of sales training for the day. There was no time or space to have long, drawn-out conversations with clients. Using our sales leadership program, retailers maintain a sales leader on the sales floor during every open hour of the holiday weekend to drive the best behaviors in store. A selling leader on the floor is a clear driver of performance during the holiday season. The selling environment also needed to feel intentional and guided rather than reactive. Operational excellence was key. Clear signage and routing through the store, a clear replenishment plan, as well as dedicated staffing in key areas like fitting rooms, cashier, and front zone were all important drivers of success. These operational tasks are never more important through your year than on a weekend like Black Friday. So this is an important signal for 2026. Training, leadership presence, and operational excellence can have just as much of an impact as having the right schedule, but they're all linked together. The final lesson is tied to visibility. This year on Black Friday, the biggest performance swings like conversion jumps, average transaction gains, and revenue spikes happened within hours, not days. Retailers who had real-time visibility could replenish big-ticket items when ATV was spiking, could shift leadership presence when the trend started to soften and perhaps a sales leader needed a break, and could move the unpaid breaks of employees around based on real-time traffic trends. Managers are often making these decisions in real time based on gut feel, but in an environment where each shopper carries higher value, Real-time visibility helps back up decision-making with data and has become an operational necessity for retailers that want to get the most out of their stores during their busiest season. When you put these lessons together, a clear roadmap begins to take shape for 2026. Successful retailers will focus on scheduling accuracy, developing stronger operational excellence, and improving real-time visibility and decision-making. To help you anchor these thoughts with your own operation, here is one question I would like you to consider. If you had to choose one area to strengthen before the next peak season, would it be scheduling accuracy, on-floor behaviors, or real-time visibility, and why? As we look ahead to 2026, I want to share a preview of what we'll be presenting at our NRF Big Ideas session. This year's session is built on a major performance study that was done throughout 2024 and 2025, more than 150,000 scheduling data points across specialty retail, and the findings are some of the most important we have ever published. A 25% like-for-like sales gap exists inside many retailers' fleet. These are the same store, same brand, same budget mix and labor plan, but with completely different outcomes. And this gap exists due to different scheduling behaviors by store managers, specifically how they schedule during their busiest 20 hours of being open. Here are the principles that retailers are following to gain that 25% sales gap. Using StoreForce, stores receive clear direction on the selling headcount needed for every open hour of their week, including their busiest 20 hours. StoreForce then assigns them a peak coverage score based on those 20 busiest hours, telling them how well they scheduled to that suggested headcount. And the chart you're seeing on screen outlines how that peak coverage score drives performance using 150,000 weeks of scheduling data as its base. Stores that incrementally improve their peak coverage score consistently outperformed stores with lower peak coverage scores when it came to like-for-like sales. Stores with a peak coverage score lower than 50% underperformed versus stores above 90% to the tune of an 18% like-for-like sales gap. Many retailers in this dataset saw a variance between these two groups as high as 25%. At NRF, Billy Bennett, who is the Director of Retail Data Analytics from Journeys, is going to join us to bring the retail operations perspective to this work. He is one of those clients where the gap is as high as 25% across his fleet. He'll work through what happened when Journeys first mapped peak coverage across their fleet, how operationalizing peak coverage revealed exactly where the opportunities were, and how small shifts in labor, not investments, but small shifts in labor produced measurable gains, and why leadership presence amplified operational and selling behaviors on the floor. This season is built around a principle we now see every year when we do this type of analysis. The biggest gains for retailers come from making better use of their labor during peak periods. So we're excited for this session, and we're going to open that session with a simple but powerful statement. A 25% comp sales gap exists inside many retailers, and it stems from differences in scheduling practices. Are stores scheduling the right headcount during their peak hours? And are stores scheduling the right sales leadership during those same peak hours? Those two levers, when executed with precision, explain the performance divide that exists in our specialty retail data set. So I want to leave you with two resources that can support the work you are doing as you prepare for the year ahead, whether you're a StoreForce client or not. The first is our full Black Friday report. It goes much deeper into the data we reviewed today and includes a complete scorecard that lets you benchmark your own results against the broader specialty retail landscape. If you want to understand how your store is stacked up against the industry, where value was left on the table, and how that should influence your planning for 2026, the report is a useful next step. You can download it through the link in the chat or the QR code on screen. The second is an opportunity to connect with our team at NRF. Many of you are already beginning to outline your labor strategies, scheduling models, and operational priorities for 2026. If you would like to look at your own Black Friday performance through the same lens we use today, or explore how to strengthen scheduling accuracy, selling effectiveness, or real-time visibility, our team will be available for conversations throughout the event. These are problems that StoreForce is designed to solve. You can use the meeting link in the chat to book time with us. We also invite you to join us at our Big Ideas session with Billy Bennett from Journeys. We will be sharing more details from our peak coverage data analysis as part of that session. If improving consistency and productivity across your fleet is a priority for 2026, this session will be very relevant to you. And with that, I'll just ask the audience if there are any questions. Now is the time. You can take yourself off mute. You can drop a question in the chat, and my assistant will ask them out loud for you. I'll pause there for 30 seconds.
We got a question coming here. Where is the link for the report? You'll be able to, if you click on the chat button, you'll be able to find the link sitting in the chat for downloading your Black Friday 2025 report.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. All right. Thank you all for attending today's session. The goal of today's conversation was to help you understand the patterns behind Black Friday and show how these insights can guide your planning for the next year. If any part of this discussion raised questions about your own metrics or your 2026 plans, please reach out. We're here to help, and we look forward to supporting you as you build towards next year. Thanks, everyone.